Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back and Happy New Year. I haven't had the chance to post videos in the new year yet, but I do hope that 2024 is treating you all well so far. This is where I talk about the books that I'm reading. I like to read diverse books and I highlight Canadian literature. If you are new to the channel, thanks so much for checking it out. Please hit subscribe and stick around. We are happy to have you here. Today I am going to wrap up my December 2023 reading. There has been a lot going on in my life, and it has meant, unfortunately, having to put reading and booktube on the back burner for just a little while, but I do hope that I will now be able to post regularly again. And I do have some catching up to do from last year. So thank you for your patience as I have been MIA. So first, I will let you know what you can expect over the next few weeks as I do try to catch up on the content that I had planned and that I want to put out. Then I will talk about the books that I read in December. And I also want to talk about a read-along that I am co-hosting with my friend Lindy at Lindy's Magpie Reads. You are all welcome to join along in that if you wish. I will put timestamps below, so feel free to jump around to whatever interests you. So let's start with some things that you can expect in the next couple of weeks or so. I have plans to post videos on my best books of 2023. I'm thinking that I'm going to share my best fiction and nonfiction, and I may do the awards that I did last year. If that's something that you'd be interested in for the awards, just let me know in the comments below. I'm considering it. The shortlist for Canada Reads has been announced, so I will be sharing my reaction to that with you. And I will also be sharing some of my channel plans and goals for the year. Might be a little bit late on that, but for those of you following along with the Reading Across Canada Challenge, I will be posting recommendations for February. That will be very soon. So that's all coming up. But for now, I'm going to share with you the 7 books that I finished in December. And then, as I said, I will also share some information about the read-along that we will be starting in February. So first up in the wrap-up is the book that we read for the Reading Across Canada Book Club in December. And the book club read In Search of April Raintree by Beatrice Monsionier. This was a reread for me. I read this in university, and this is the 40th anniversary edition of this book. I love the cover. It was a really interesting experience to read this now. It definitely had a different impact for me over 20 years later. I think mostly because my understanding of Indigenous history and issues in Canada has changed. I hope that I know more about it now. This story is about 2 sisters who are Métis. One looks Indigenous and the other is white passing, and they end up being put into the foster system because their parents aren't able to care for them. And it follows the different paths they take in their lives. The bond and the tension between them, I think, is very well written. This book has some really difficult scenes to read, and I remember those from my first read. It has really been, I think, a foundational book for Indigenous authors, especially Métis authors like Katarina Vermette, who wrote the introduction for this edition. And it has become, I would say, a foundational book for more Métis stories to be written. And I think that that's why this book is so important to CanLit. It has definitely laid some very important groundwork for more stories like this to be told. So speaking of Indigenous stories, the second book that I have to share with you is Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. I read and listened to this book because I had heard that the audio had throat singing in it. Tanya Tagaq is a throat singer and artist. And I should also say that I read this for the December prompt for the Reading Across Canada Challenge. For that, we were in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut, and the prompt was to read an Indigenous author, and Tanya Tagaq is from Nunavut. So this book it's different than other books that I've read. It is lyrical, and I think I've mentioned this before, but listening to the throat singing alongside the story was very impactful. It made the story come alive in unsettling ways. The story actually, now that I've had some time to digest this a bit, it was actually a perfect choice for this prompt. Because when I think of Canada's North, I think of its beauty, the natural beauty, but I also think of the harsh and unrelenting weather, and the way of life. And the story is like that too. There is abuse and a rawness to it, but there's also something beautiful about the writing. And I think that this is one of those books that I would probably get even more out of it on a reread. And I hope that Tanya Tagaq will write more. I would be interested in reading more of her work. So, well, I think I'm going to stick with the same theme here. Because the next book I have is a nonfiction book, and it's Truth-Telling, 7 Conversations About Indigenous Life in Canada by Michelle Good. Many of you have heard of her because her book, 5 Little Indians, has won several awards, and I've talked about it a number of times on my channel. Truth-Telling is, as I said, a nonfiction book with 7 essays, each one focusing on a different topic related to Indigenous peoples. So this book was reminiscent of Lee Maricle's Conversations with Canadians. It's similar in its structure and how it approaches the subject matter. In this, Michelle Good shares some of her own personal stories in these essays, and I really like how she approaches some of the topics by storytelling. The next book that I have here is Adult Onset by Anne-Marie MacDonald. This book has been on my shelf for too long. You all know that Anne-Marie MacDonald is one of my all-time favorite Canadian authors. I read her newest novel, Fane, last year and thought I really need to finish her backlist. So I'm glad that I finally got to Adult Onset. The first thing that kind of struck me about this book was how funny it was. There were some great lines and chuckles along the way, and I wasn't expecting that because the topic is kind of serious, and I don't recall really laughing at any other Anne-Marie MacDonald book. So this made me realize that this book was going to be different, and what it had in common, though, with her other books were family dynamics and the family relationships. She always does that part really, really well. This story is told over a week in the life of Mary Rose, who is called Mr. The book is divided into the days of the week, but it tends to go all over the place because the story jumps around in time through memories or flashbacks. And Mary Rose is taking care of her 2 children and remembering things that happened in her own childhood. I did think that the revelations she has of her past was well done, but the story was more jumbled than I think it needed to be. It's an interesting look at motherhood and memory. And next, I think that this was my favorite book of the month. I read The Innocents by Michael Crummey. This was longlisted for Canada Reads, and I also read it for the Newfoundland and Labrador prompt for the Reading Across Canada Challenge. This was the first book that I've read by Michael Crummey, and I have more on my shelf by him, a few more, and I can't wait to get to them. This book tells the story of Ada and Everend, a brother and sister who find themselves orphaned at the ages of 9 and 11. They are living in isolation on the island of Newfoundland and having to fend for themselves. The fact that they survive the winter is a miracle. This story kind of made me think of the Blue Lagoon, except obviously in this one it was much colder climate, a more harsh climate. They depend on each other in this one, and they are wary of any strangers. And the story is just told in a very quiet and subtle way. It kind of seeps into you like the cold weather, and I couldn't help but just feel for these two siblings. And the title is also brilliant. Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. This is one of those rare occasions when I watched the movie first and then read the book. In this case, I think it made me enjoy the book more. But it is hard to say since I don't really know what my reaction would have been to the book without knowing the story. I thought the movie created the tension that the story needed in exceptional ways. And I thought the book lost some of that. The movie does stay mostly true to the story, though, and I do appreciate that. The story is about a family who are escaping the city by getting away, leaving the world behind. They've rented this Airbnb, and they are enjoying pretending that this is the life that they really live. And strange things start to happen. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And then people show up at the door saying that this is their house and they want to stay there. And the best part of the story to me was the tension buildup. But if you are looking for answers, or if you are someone who needs to have everything wrapped up in the end, this is probably not the one for you. If you are looking for a book that is kind of creepy and gives you an eerie feeling, then you might like this one. It definitely gives some very interesting perspectives on race and class that I don't think were as evident in the movie. The last book that I have to share was my festive read, which I managed to kind of sneak in there. I finally read for the first time A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I probably don't have to say too much about this. Even without having read it, I knew the story, but I will say that reading the story did put a few things into perspective for me. It felt different reading this one than watching any of the shows or movies that I've seen. So those are the 7 books that I read in December. Those wrapped up my year of 2023. Please let me know if you have read any of these books or if you are interested in any of them. I know I'm late to the party, so but I would still like to know what you enjoyed reading in December. Did you have any festive reads in 2023? I would love to hear about all of that. And then last but not least, I want to mention the read-along that my friend Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Reads and I are co-hosting. There was some interest in doing a read-along of some of the big books that I hauled. I will leave a link to that video below because it talks about about 12 different books. So we've decided to do a read-along of A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. And we are starting this at the beginning of February, and we will be taking our time because I think it is the biggest book on my shelves. It is massive. So I will leave the schedule in the description box below and how you can let Lindy know to include you in the Voxer group so that you can discuss the book along with us and with the group. We'd be happy to have you join us, and I hope that it will be a really good read. So I'm hoping to be back with some more videos, some of my faves of 2023 and recommendations, as I said, for the Reading Across Canada Challenge. So keep an eye out for all of those. Thanks again for your patience while I had to take some time to just deal with life. I am very happy to be back, and I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.